Welcome back to this latest episode of Japan's Top Business Interviews. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Story, President, Dale Carnegie Tokyo Training. My special guest today is Gaspard Dessy, who is the CEO and founder of Port Cities. Gaspard, welcome.
Thank you.
Port Cities, are you in the shipping business? What is this all about, Port Cities? What does this mean?
Yeah, that's a common question, unfortunately, because you are not in a shipping business.
You're not, but you took the name Port Cities. Why is that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Port Cities is an old company that was founded by someone else in Hong Kong. And they were in the trading business, import-export from China, late 90s, doing a lot of import-export. So that was a trading company in a port, so it makes sense.
Okay.
And then they moved the business to doing more digital transformations. So implementing software, management software for businesses. And in 2015, I was a customer of them working in Indonesia for one of their clients. And then I proposed to them that I will launch Port Cities Indonesia. So a new venture that was like a kind of spin-off of this company. And then we grew up exponentially and we expanded from Port Cities Indonesia to this new company with the same name. We expanded to 10 countries.
10?
Yeah.
In what space of time did you expand to 10 countries?
So we started this new company also called Port Cities in Indonesia in 2015.
Yeah.
And then one by one, we are in 2024
So 9
now.
years later, you're in 10 countries.
Yes.
Wow, that's impressive. So did you buy them out or you became a partner of the original owners, or how did that work?
No, so actually the original company, Port Cities, is still based in Hong Kong.
All right.
Selling on the Hong Kong market. So
Yep.
that's an independent company.
Oh, independent. Okay.
Yeah. And then we start Port Cities first Indonesia. And after we create a new holding in Hong Kong to own all our companies.
Uh-huh.
But so this new company is the company that I create, and they were investor in this company.
Oh, so
they are
they
still-
invested in your company.
Yes. So they are still investor in
Like
in,
sort of
in Hong Kong.
reverse management buyout, actually. in a way. Oh, that's
Exactly.
interesting.
But no, of course, to scale a service firm, one way is to onboard new partner. So that we did it mostly by proposing to key employees to invest and or to launch a new business somewhere else, etc. So I was the original founder, but we have many more partners today.
You have how many more?
It depends on the definition of partner. So
Okay.
maybe some people have 1% equity,
Oh, okay, right.
some more, but we are more than 10 partners. Yeah,
Oh,
15
okay,
maybe.
right. How many people altogether in the organization?
200
Oh,
employees.
Wow, that's impressive in such a short space of time. And Japan, when did Japan start?
So we started Japan at the worst time. So just at the beginning of the COVID.
So 2020,
Yeah.
obviously.
So it was not possible to enter Japan at the time.
You couldn't even enter Japan, right?
No. So when we decided to, so we often expanded by opportunities. So like we have a key staff or a big customer that want us to serve them in a specific market. So it was the case in Japan. So we signed a big contract. We needed to start an operation in Japan.
Right.
We decided to, like we did before, to take this opportunity not just for the contract but for the long run. So to take this opportunity to start a big customer in Japan and then build an office. And the only challenge, of course, in Japan, besides all other challenge of starting a business in Japan, was during the COVID. It was very hard to find a manager to open the business, etc.
Yeah, very hard. So let's wind it back a little bit, Gaspard. Give us a little bit on your background. I mean, how did you wind up in this business? How did you wind up in Indonesia? And then we know in Japan because you had a contract here and that drove you to come, but you actually came. You didn't send anybody else, you actually came. So give us the background. Where did you start and how did you get to this amazing 200 people in 10 countries in such a short space of time?
Yeah, so my background first. So I come from Belgium.
Okay.
And I study business in Belgium, business engineering. After my business school, I went to do an internship and then to work in Indonesia for a Belgian company. So it was in the furniture business, working in supply chain. so supply chain management. So that's why like working, optimizing operations for logistic, production, etc. To do that, often you use IT system. So quickly my job became kind of IT manager for, so it was a big SME. So quickly I became IT manager, let's say, for the region. So they had a lot of operation in Indonesia. So I implement a management software in several companies there as IT manager.
Did you have an IT background prior to this, or this is all new to you?
No. But in the specific area of supply chain management, you often use software to optimize.
So you were
to
used to
manage
supply
operation.
chain management related software before.
Yes.
Okay.
So
you're familiar with it.
Exactly. So we had introduction to ERP software in my school. So that means the integrated management software. Then I also wrote my thesis on a supply chain planning software. So I built a supply chain planning
So
software.
you wrote your thesis on supply chain management software as your thesis topic.
Yes.
Wow.
Kind of.
Okay. Very specific.
Yeah,
very
to
specific.
optimize the delivery.
Right.
To optimize the production and delivery network.
Okay. Right. And how long were you in Indonesia?
Then I worked in Indonesia 3 years for this company.
Mm-hmm.
And then while I was implementing the management software for this company in Indonesia, I worked with Portitis Hong Kong, which was their IT vendor. And then in 2015, I launched Portitis Indonesia.
And you saw something in their software that you thought was quite unique or quite special. I mean, to give up your job and then go and start your own company, that's a very bold move anyway, but you must have a lot of confidence in on the technology that they had.
Yeah, so just to give a few words on the technology. So what we do is we help company to use an integrated management software.
Mm-hmm.
So how we call this type of software, we call it an ERP.
Mm-hmm.
The most common ERP software, the most famous are SAP, Oracle ERP, Microsoft Dynamics. So often it's easier to give the name, people then realize what is it. The specific software that I was implementing for my company at the time was Odoo. So Odoo is one of the ERP software. So I would say more similar to NetSuite, if people know. And then this software, so we were very enthusiastic and about the future of this software. So very affordable, very flexible, easy to use. So we saw the opportunity, and I was thinking, okay, that could help Indonesian market. That's for me a good opportunity to start to launch my own business, and then I started.
So I guess I don't know anything about Indonesia. I know the history, I know the politics to some extent because I studied that at university, but I've never been there. One of the few Australians who probably hasn't been to Bali, but too many Australians there so haven't gone. But I'm wondering, the Indonesian market, was it capable enough to spend the money on this type of software? Because I imagine human labour is very cheap, but software is relatively expensive, I guess. So I'm just wondering how you're able to find a market there. This is just my imagination. I don't know. Maybe I got that totally wrong.
You're right. So that's the challenge. So, and that's also why at the time I chose Odoo. So because the software was one of the most affordable, and so that's a bit the strength why people move to Odoo. So they are looking for an alternative which is easier to use, more flexible, and cheaper than SAP.
Right.
So that's why at the time we had a lot of employees in our factories, in the different businesses. So we needed an affordable software. And then I found Odoo, and then I was thinking, actually, that's a kind of software that could work for Indonesian market.
So Port Cities created Odoo, or not?
No. We are consultant.
Consumers of it. Okay.
Consultant for Odoo. The same way, I would say, Capgemini or Accenture are implementing SAP or Oracle or Salesforce.
Or like Salesforce, which is a money-making machine beyond imagination, because I know we use Salesforce for everything here. It costs a fortune, but once they've got you, I guess. So, then how did you manage to get, based in Indonesia, a big contract in Japan? How did that come about?
Yeah, so it was not directly from Indonesia. So first, after Indonesia, we start to expand it in other countries. So maybe to come back to your previous question. So indeed, in Indonesia, they don't have maybe, or not enough the maturity, the business maturity to think, I mean, labor is cheap or is used to be cheap. So we don't have the maturity to think, okay, I will invest money to optimize the cost, etc. So that was very, I would say, the most challenging part to do business, especially software business in Indonesia. And that's why we start to expand to other markets. That's one of the reasons. And also to more developed market. And so we expand to more developed market. We expand to Malaysia, to Singapore. And from those companies, we start to work for Japanese firms.
Who are based there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we work for Japanese firm, for a famous Japanese retailer in Japan. And we work for several companies there. And then we discuss with them to implement the same management software for some of their companies in Japan. And that started in 2020.
Which is interesting, because normally Japanese branches outside of Japan operate, I'm not going to say independently, but they tend to be very localized. And to bring something from there back into the headquarters in Japan is not that common. It usually goes the other direction. So that's interesting that they obviously recognized that the product had a lot of viability and value, and they thought that, okay, let's bring this back into Japan, because often the people who are sent out to work on those expat jobs, Japanese expats sent outside, are very risk averse. Don't want to do anything new, don't want to change anything. So I'm amazed that they were actually bold enough to try it, and then even more bold to come back to headquarters and say, we should use this at home in our headquarters. That's really unique situation, I think. And so how did you find the buyers? How did you find these Japanese buyers? Did you have a sales force that you were using, go out and knock on doors, or you're just doing it all through marketing, through AdWords, or how on earth did you find these Japanese companies?
Yeah, so actually we work for many Japanese companies in Southeast Asia because maybe they like to work for international firms, but we are more international than
they like
local
that
firms, probably.
Okay,
probably. Right. So we
are an international operation.
Yeah, we are kind of European firms. So I think it's a good brand all over the world. In general, in terms of quality, etc. Why they didn't look to use the Japanese software in the developing countries? Because it's expensive and not flexible. So usually SAP, they will sell to the HQ, like in Europe, America, etc. And then they try to impose this software all over the world. But then the factories, the business in developing countries, they look the price per user and they say that's crazy expensive, or it's not flexible. We are not doing the business the same way here in Indonesia or in Vietnam than in Europe. So can we use an alternative software? And so when we work for large corporation, so the software that we implement, Odoo, is usually an alternative software. So they use SAP in the group, and then for this factory or this business unit in this country, they would start to use our software. And so that's how we manage to sell to those big corporations. And that's why also they would take the risk. So they will not take the risk. So as you say, all business all big companies are risk averse, especially in terms of software. So for the CEO of a big company, it's much more safe to say, I will invest in SAP because nobody can blame them after.
There used to be a TV commercial, I think it was TV or magazine commercial in the USA. This is, I don't know, 60s or 70s, I can't remember. But it said, no one ever gets fired for ordering IBM,
That's the same today.
That was like, it became like, that's the exact wording, but it's something to those lines that for IT leaders in companies looking for particular solutions, if you choose IBM, you're never going to get fired. It's very safe, and that was a very effective advertising tagline for them. So I guess that's a similar idea, isn't it?
That's the same with SAP. And so how we enter the big group usually is, and that's maybe the strength that we are also in the developing country, is that we can enter those big corporates in developing markets. And that happened for we have big customer now where we enter in Indonesia. Many big customers we enter in Indonesia, and now we are doing project in Europe, in Singapore, in Japan, thanks to those early opportunities. And so they choose the alternative software in those markets because it's cheaper usually.
And I mean, that's interesting. I've just got a bit of a spider web in my mind here. If you actually get to the outer rings of the spider web, connects you back to the centerpiece where the spider is, but then there are other rings outside in that spider web in other countries. So have those Japanese companies taken you to other markets, and they've sort of taken the software global through you, or not?
No, but maybe we are not at that stage yet.
Not that stage, but that's a possibility.
That's our next stage of development. So no, I mean, when we start, it's very complex to implement end-to-end business.
You could be in 100 countries, Gaspard, very shortly, easily. It's only 10 times what you're doing now, so I'm sure that can be done.
No, but this is complex. So to implement those software, so our first challenge was, let's make it successful for SME. And now let's make it successful for one branch or one business unit of a corporate. Now we try to make it successful in multiple countries for a corporate. And our next stage of development would be, have more strategic collaboration with the corporate, to not say, okay, we just work in 3 countries or 2 countries, but let's look at your 10, 20 countries. And
what about the language? Because, the software has to deal with Japanese text, right? And double byte characters and this type of thing. So is that, or is it only in English?
No, it's a multi-language software.
Multi-language, right? So the Japanese can use it in Japanese in Japan without any problem.
That's why we are very confident for the Japanese market. Mm-hmm. So the software was not specifically well localized for Japanese market.
Was not.
But the software was widely spread all over the world. Mm-hmm. It means that technically they already adapt to multi-language. They already adapt to the type of character, because they had, a lot of users in China, etc. So similar way in a technical way to write, etc. So basically, it was almost ready for Japanese market. We even help the company to improve the accounting version. We call it localization. Mm-hmm. So the local accounting for Japan firm, we improve them to correct the Japanese translation, so for all the menu, etc.
So how do you actually kick off in Japan? Okay, you might have a client in Malaysia or in Singapore or Indonesia or whatever, and there's a headquarters here. But how do you do that? How do you get on a plane and come over here and just start a business? How did that work? And were you the one who came?
Yeah, I'm the one who came.
You're the pioneer here in Japan.
Yeah, so why it was me? It could have been someone else. Mm-hmm. It was me because we needed an executive or a managing director that was available to move to Japan. So I was the one at the time. Mm-hmm.
Did you know anything about what you were doing, getting into Japan? Had you know?
No, I didn't know.
Had you read my book? Where is it? Japan Business Mastery. Did you read that before you came?
Maybe I should have.
You should have. Definitely should have read that book. It would have helped you a lot. There you go. So that you came here in 2020 January?
Yeah. No, we came for the pre-sales in February, and then we did a small consulting engagement of 2 months, maybe. March, April, and then we signed our contract, I think early June, and you opened the company the same week.
And so you got in before they closed the border.
So for me, it was a very precise question in terms of timing. So COVID starts really in February, maybe. Mm-hmm. So in February we did the pre-sales, then we signed the consulting engagement. I came back for that in March. Mm-hmm. Then they kind of blocked the border, I think. So I was not able to leave and come back. No. So I decided to extend my trip for maybe 1 month. So I was planning to come just for maybe 2-3 weeks and then come back. So I decided to stay maybe 6 weeks just to finish the consulting engagement and the pre-sales and the sales of the project. And after I had to come back, I have a family, etc. And then we open legally the business with someone else. So we find someone to work part-time for us, more as an office manager. So, I mean, when you open maybe your first company, you try to do yourself to save costs, but after that, it's more efficient that we try to work with people to delegate to other firms. So we work with people to open the business, to make the visa, to make the payroll, accounting, etc. We externalize to other
So
other
you're
firms.
basically outsourcing all the mechanics
Yes.
of visa application to specialist company, payroll to specialist company,
Yeah.
et cetera, And
It's good to save costs, but if you try to do everything yourself, you're too slow. You do too many mistakes. So we try to outsource a lot, and to have also our own maybe just assistant office manager to help to manage all of that. So that's what we do in every country when we open.
And so you've also got your own visa. You know, knocking my microphone around here. You've also got your own visa situation. So did you have a working visa, or you're on a tourist visa at this time? How did you go about the visa side of things? Because there's a few requirements to have a visa for Japan to live here and work here.
Yeah. So we opened the company in June 2020. Then after that, we start the visa application to send a senior consultant and myself. They start to make business visa. During COVID, they made it for a short period of time. So I remember precisely because of the time. So it was between October and the 4th of June 2021, the 4th of January 2021. So just for maybe 3 months. And so we just arrived at this time. So maybe end of October when they just give the first working visa. So I had a working visa quite early as I think it's engineer or a specialized worker or something like this. So yeah, because the company was opened by someone else, so we assigned the office manager as the company director at the beginning to open the business.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, to make it quick.
Okay.
And after that, I became the CEO of the business.
Oh,
here.
okay.
So that's usually faster also to open a business.
And was the office manager a full-time employee, or they were temp staff?
Yeah, just part-time.
Sent in. Wow, you got the whole responsibility for the company in Japan in the hands of the temp staff. That's very brave.
Yes, but that was actually, short period of time, and then after that, I moved here, and then we switched my visa. It was complicated to move with my family, so I was doing business trip back and forth for 1.5 years.
Wow, that's quite long. Your family's based in where?
So just before we opened Japan, we were living in Mexico.
Mexico, wow, okay. We're getting
so that was a big change personally.
Even further away, right?
Yes. So we were living in Mexico. Then we opened the business in Japan from Mexico.
And you were in Mexico to open the business there, is that the idea?
Yes.
Right, okay.
So we still have our business in Mexico. So that's quite far. But
I think Mongolia could be a good spot for you. You obviously like to go to very distant places. I'm thinking from Japan, where's the most distant place? Mongolia could be good.
We are actually doing business in Mongolia,
Is
but
that right?
We're
Really?
not having a branch there. So we have.
That'll be the next thing.
Yeah,
You're the head of the Mongolian branch.
We did a big project in Mongolia, but just we don't need to open too many offices.
No, that's amazing. So in terms of staffing, I mean, you started adding staff in Japan. So how many people have you got working here now?
In Japan now we just hire people. So maybe you are seven people.
7, right? So it's still pretty small.
So it's quite small in Japan.
And
yes.
Getting a temporary staff member is relatively easy because there are agencies who will do that. I mean, one of my team members is on maternity leave, so an agency has provided a temporary person who could be there a year. She reckons she's coming back in a year. I've had kids. I doubt that. I reckon it'll take her 2 years to get back here, but whatever. But that agency provides a person, all very simple. But getting people to sign on as full-time employees for a small startup, unknown startup, port cities, even the name doesn't make any sense for the business. So what the hell? How do you explain it to your parents? How do you explain that to your grandparents? How do you explain that to your spouse? I'm going to work for a company called Port Cities. Oh, you're in the shipping business? No, we're in digital. Hard to explain. So how did you go about finding staff, and how did you go about convincing them to join?
So I think finding good staff in IT consulting is generally complicated in any country in the world. But that's even more complicated in Japan.
I'm sure it is. What made it more complicated here?
I think similar reason than other countries. So in all countries, I would say it's difficult to know where to hire the people, especially if you don't come from this country. So all countries are a bit different. Where to hire. Can you find people on LinkedIn or not? So that's not the case in Japan.
LinkedIn's not going to work
yes,
for IT engineers here, that's for sure.
In all countries, you need to learn what's the best way to find the people. You need to convince people, as you mentioned. You need to convince people to join small company. But that's a challenge everywhere, but even more in Japan, I would say.
So how did you get over that challenge? When we started this company, 2007, it's a franchise business. So we bought the franchise. The existing franchise was there, but that was owned by another person.
Yeah.
So even though the history was there, started in 1963, we come in 2007. Wow, trying to get people to join was so hard. And we wound up paying well over the market to convince people to give up the security of where they were and take the risk. There was like a risk premium attached to us, even though the brand Dale Carnegie is very strong, but that franchise brand was non-existent as a new startup. So that's how we did it. We just paid out truckloads of money until we built up the business to a scale where we could attract other people. But how did you do it?
So maybe the first answer that you don't expect is that we try to avoid to do it. So just our business model is that we sell a big consulting project to install, customize the business software, configure, migrate the data, etc. For that job, you need a lot of experts. We have centers with a lot of experts in Indonesia and Vietnam that also support all our countries. So that's a bit the case in all countries where we sell a project. We have maybe 2 staff in the country and then 1 staff in Indonesia helping, or 3 staff in the country, 3 staff in Indonesia helping. So we always work with offshore staff. In Japan, because it was so hard to find good people, we outsource much more to other countries.
Really?
So, for example, if we do a project in Japan with 4 people, we will have one staff in Japan or half a staff in Japan and 3 staff in other countries. So we try to outsource like 80%. Yeah. So yeah, because of the language we cannot outsource 100%. Yeah. You have actually also the option to hire, because it's one of the challenges that, especially in our business, we need to work in English also, because we work with developers that speak English, etc. So we need bilingual staff. So hiring in Japan, very difficult. For a small company, very difficult. If they are in IT, even more difficult. And if they are bilingual, even more difficult. Wow. So it's very hard to hire people. So actually, to find that kind of profile that speak English and Japanese IT, it's almost easier to do it overseas.
Really?
So you have actually a lot of people in Indonesia, Vietnam also that learn Japanese. Their Japanese is maybe it's not as good, etc. But you can find bilingual people in other countries. So that's one way to do it. And then the other way is we have some stuff that we find by paying very expensive fees to a hiring agency.
Well,
so that's one option. Yeah,
we want IT expertise. We want English. That combination. The people who know that are working for big companies who've got big, deep pockets to pay them. So you're trying to pull people out of that environment to go and work for a little tiny company with a confusing name when they can work for a big name company here. That's not an easy job. So how did you convince them to come on board? Yes. What was your persuasion power techniques you used on them?
So some of them are some of the successful hires that we made were we hired them relatively young. And,
I see.
And then they didn't receive nice opportunities. Maybe the sweet spot also is that in Japan, they don't give a lot of good opportunity to women, in my opinion.
Okay,
so that's a kind of sweet spot also. Yeah.
And women are a bit more mobile, I think, than men. It seems to me like normally
Yeah, because I think women tend to be underpaid in
Yes.
Japan compared to men.
Yes.
So it's easily, for us, they bring the same value. So we can pay them above market.
Well, I was going to say, I think for women, they can move around a bit more freely perhaps than men. A lot of women have decided not to marry, and they're married to their jobs, they love it, and not to have families. So, you've got a pool of well-educated, English-speaking, smart, capable people who don't want to work in a hierarchical, male-dominated Japanese society company. And so something like what you're offering, which is probably a bit more flexible, a bit more open-minded, not so hierarchical, probably for them it's like heaven, I guess.
So you have the right pitch, but still difficult to find the profile.
Well, the numbers are not going to be there. Number of women in IT for a start is going to be a very small number.
Yeah, but for example, one of our consultants is she had the previous experience in an IT consulting firm, but she studied literature, so she was bilingual, and then she moved to an IT company, and then the project were not very interesting for this company, so she was open to move, and then she joined our company, and it's working very well. So that's an example. So, but there is no secret silver bullet to find the perfect employee. So some we post job, some we use some website, job portal. We use some hiring agencies. We try to do networking, ask referral. So it's a mix of everything.
If you want to be successful as a leader, do the Leadership Training for Managers course. All companies need people who can both manage and lead. Leading people screams out for real skills in communication, dealing with all different types of people, being excellent at innovation, planning, delegation, handling mistakes, doing performance reviews really well, and inspiring and motivating the team. Do the Leadership Training for Managers course now in either Japanese or English. Are you doing business with Japan? Do you really know how things work? Japan Business Mastery provides the answers. Do you have the right networks and know how to create them? Do you know how to get on the same wavelength with Japanese buyers? Do you know what being trustworthy looks like from the Japanese perspective? Japan Business Mastery is based on more than 30 years' experience in Japan and will become your go-to guide. Want to succeed in Japan? Buy Japan Business Mastery now. How many people would you want to have in the office at this stage of the business? Is 7 the right number, or you really need to have 15 people in the company at this stage, or the business, or are you mainly focused on hiring people to try and scale the business? What's sort of the plan here?
Yeah, I think we are going to keep the ratio where we do 70% of our job offshore. So we are going to keep that ratio, but we want to grow our business in Japan because there is a huge opportunity for digital transformation and improving the way company work with software. And so at the moment you are hiring to have 10 people. So that's why I'm not sure with the contract that we sign if you are 7 or 8 today. And so we are looking to hire a few more people. So still looking. We don't have the solution to hire people yet. And I hope in a few years to be 30 quickly.
30.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, it's going to be substantial.
30 in Japan, so that would be the equivalent of a consulting business of maybe 80, 90 people, because we'll do still a lot overseas. So.
Well, I guess too, if you've got an existing series of contracts and you're just supplying to those existing contracts, a lot of from outside, I'm guessing that the company's basically profitable from the very start.
Yeah, that's a bit the benefit of service business. Is normally you don't need to invest that much to be profitable. I would say
it took us a hell of a long time to become profitable as a service business.
No, that's why I say in theory. I mean, that's it compared to launching a factory or doing R&D. That being said, if you launch a new market as a service business, you expect to spend a lot of money because first you need to hire salespeople, probably a few of them because half is not going to be successful. So you need to pay those salary for maybe a year or two. You are probably going to be profitable after a few years if everything is okay. But sometimes everything is not okay. So overall, even when we expand to different country, in some cases we were profitable day one because we had big contract. So that's the benefit. But in some cases we had to invest for maybe 2 years before being profitable.
Yeah.
And also the case that the strength maybe of our business and why we managed to expand quickly is because we could outsource part of the job to other country. It means that we were able with very few staff to quickly sell big contract, big project because we could deliver a lot with overseas staff. So it required to invest much less upfront to train staff, etc.
So the women, good source. Obviously, your persuasive power is very good because you convince them to come on board. In terms of managing them, because it's quite a complex business where you've got a lot of the activity taking place outside of Japan. Everything's in English. They've got to work, well, fortunately, Asia time zones are not bad. If they're working with people in France or whatever, that's going to be more difficult time zone-wise. But in terms of managing this business, that seems quite complex to me, or is that just my imagination? It's actually a simple business, and Gaspard has no issues at all with the way this is structured, or is it quite complex?
No, it's quite complex. Yeah, so the complexity of the people business and maybe international people business is to manage the people. So to manage people are many complex aspects. You need people to be motivated. You need them to be productive. You need to learn to give feedback. You need to learn to know how to drive them. And that's complex because each person is different. So the incentive won't work the same way for each staff. Each country tend to be a little bit different as well. So we are all human. So we are all the same. General rule will still apply. People like a nice boss. People like to get more money. So, all the rules are the same. But some country or some culture tend to be more one way or more another way. So, for example...
In this country, for example, if I'm in a small company like this, the job definition is going to be quite broad because we all have to do everything together. And Japanese like to have a very clearly boxed in, defined set of responsibilities to take accountability for. And they don't like having a vague borderline around what they're responsible for. But I'm guessing when you start up, it's all hands on deck.
No
it's
choice,
like we're all doing everything together. So how did you find getting the Japanese to accept that it's not going to be a very neat little box that they just only do these things? Actually, here, we got to do everything together. How did you get around that problem?
Yeah. So first, that problem, you had to resolve it also overseas because as most aspects, Japanese are maybe a bit more one way than other countries, but everywhere in the world, staff will be more productive if they have a clear job description, simple job, etc. So when we move from small startup to Indonesia to become a bigger corporation, bigger SME, I would say, we try to formalize the job. We are in a complex job, doing consulting.
But not at the beginning, though.
Not at the beginning.
So that comes with maturity.
Yes, but very quickly we realize, okay, people are not performing well, or we give them more responsibility, then the performance decrease. And we realize that when people are doing only one job, they do it much better. So it's not always possible when you have a small team, but for example,
scrambling all the time.
In consulting, in IT consulting, just being IT consultant means so many things. So we try, for example, not to mix consultant and sales. So a consultant could help the sales team.
So consultant and sales what's the difference between a consultant and sales?
It's true that it depends on the consulting business, but especially in IT consulting, because the delivery part is quite technical and quite specialized. So it's harder to combine being a good sales and a good consultant.
Okay.
So we really try to have a team that focus on sales, so they still need to learn the product, etc., and people that focus on consulting. So maybe the consultant they will help, they will join the salespeople sometimes in a meeting, etc., but our main focus is being a good consultant. That's already hard enough. And also, for example, we split the job of because we have also people that can develop the software, so write code, etc., and you also split that job to say, okay, you focus so you can learn to be functional consultant for the software, so learn how to use the software and configure it, or you can learn how to develop the software. And so we really split the job, and we realize, okay, when people focus a bit more on one job, they will do better. So we have a team that are developer, team that are consultant, and people that are sales. And when we don't overlap the role, they perform better in any country in the world. And so that's also what we try to do in Japan. Of course, what you say is still true. As a small business, we need to ask them to be more flexible.
Yeah, more flexible.
So we ask a lot of our consultants to help a lot in sales, etc.
And how is that going? Because, in many ways, Japan is a highly risk-averse culture, and being flexible is not part of the equation. So you're asking them to really step out of their comfort zone. How do you encourage them to do that? How do you communicate with them in a way they say, okay, I'm going to do this?
I think the first thing is to acknowledge that each person is unique. So by recognizing that each person is unique, you accept that some people in your team may be willing to take that risk and some not. So for example, if I have 3 consultants and I know that one of them is much more comfortable to do sales, I will not ask the 2 others.
I see.
So that's one way to do it.
You're picking people.
Yeah, you are picking. And so you can say, yeah, you picked also in your hiring, etc. But it doesn't mean you don't need to hire the non-flexible staff, because maybe they will be very good consultant, but it's to recognize that each person is unique. And so so it's a balance. Management is always finding the right balance. So it's the balance between putting them in a box so they are more productive, but also accepting some flexibility so you can manage your business, especially a small business.
In terms of getting people engaged, getting them excited about the opportunity, because you're really selling a future dream of a 30-person company when you're 7 people. That's really, they're buying into not the company today, but what the company will become, and how big it will become, and how big their job will become, and maybe they're running a whole section or something in the future. So how do you go about getting them engaged to put up with what's going on now for the hope of what's going to come in the future?
Yeah, I think that overall, again, that apply to each countries. So each country, in my opinion, a good manager in general should learn to tell story.
Okay.
So why should learn to tell story? Because to convince a staff to be engaged, you cannot just tell them be engaged, and you cannot just tell them, okay, the company is going to be 30 people in 3 years, so you need to be engaged because you are going to be manager, etc. You need to tell this story, or maybe tell the story that what happened in other countries before. So then I can tell the story, okay, how we start in Indonesia. And then my first employee, they are all manager. So you see that person, he starts as a fresh graduate, and then maybe 5 years later, he managed a team of 10 people, etc. So by telling those stories, it's much better to convince people that just tell them be engaged, or even tell them promise that, why would they promise you? So telling story, I think, is the best way as a leader globally, and even more. I think in Japan it's even more important because, I think it's difficult, and people usually have a definition of the career which is specific to Japan. So the old style that they would do a career in a big corporation very slowly, etc. So you can show them alternative, and in my opinion, the best way is to tell them a story and try to convince them that way. That being said, again, one other challenge to engage Japanese employees is that I would say, especially for European or Western people, is to be able to read their mind. So, if you speak to Western people, they will tell you usually when they are not happy, or they will tell you when they disagree, or they will just give you some feedback, which is very hard to get, especially if you don't speak Japanese, from a Japanese staff.
Well, I was thinking when you said that, I doubt whether the Japanese are going to speak up and they're going to hold it in, and especially they've got to communicate it in English too, which is complex subjects like that in a foreign language are not easy, right?
Yeah, that's already true for any countries. So if I would speak to Belgian people or French people in English, they would give me much less feedback. I know it. So that's just
so how do you
the language is
overcome
important.
that then? How do you get the feedback? How do you get them to share what they're thinking?
Yeah. We had some experience, because I would say first that challenge, we had this challenge already in Asia. So in many countries where we are in Asia, English is not our native language. So we had this challenge to speak in a foreign language. Generally in Asia, people are more introvert. They will not speak out. They will respect hierarchy, so they will not speak to their boss freely, etc. So that's already a challenge that we are used to deal with in Asia, but still harder in Japan.
Harder in Japan. That's the other end of the scale.
That's another level. So we learn to do business in Indonesia, and then Vietnam, very, very difficult. Then Japan is another level.
But at least the Japanese are on time. I don't know about the Indonesians. That rubber time down there must be a bit of a nightmare running a business. But thinking about, I guess also when you're a small team, you've really got to rely on them to help you and guide you about what they can, what can be done in Japan. And their ideas are going to become really important. If it's a big mature company, it's sort of established, it rocks along. People don't have to contribute a lot of ideas because it's already mature. But in your case, you're not there yet. So what have you found works well to get ideas from people to understand how you can do things in Japan the right way or a better way?
I think that's, again, similar answer than before, is understand that each staff is unique, and to know for each type of advice to which staff you can ask. And because you know that some people, they are never going to contradict you, but maybe one of your staff, he may be the introvert one, but he may be the one that can give you a feedback. So in your team, I think even you have not a so big team like us, like 7 people, you can still find many different type of staff that if you combine them well, you will get the feedback on many ideas.
So you're like the conductor of the orchestra. You've got all the different instruments there and you get them to play well together. It's a beautiful sound. So in terms of building trust, now, you're a startup in Japan. You're not a startup in other countries. You're in 10 countries. So 200 people around the world. You've got, that's quite an impressive thing. And you've grown very quickly in Japan, really, in the time, especially you think about COVID. I mean, that's just a nightmare. The fact that you've grown that well in COVID is a really laudable thing. So how do you build trust? How do you build trust with Japanese? What works well?
So to build trust in Japan, so the first part of the answer is the same way that you will build trust with employees in other countries. So to build trust is deliver on your promises. So if you need to provide them training, career opportunity, salary, promotion, bonus, deliver on those promises. The second is manage them well day to day. So it means the right balance between being nice with people and being tough. So manager is a coach. So a coach that is always nice is a bad coach. So we need to be nice most of the time, but tough enough to make them better, to make them improve. And they will like it. Even the Japanese will like it, actually. So we are afraid sometimes you arrive in new country with new culture, very difficult to communicate. And the mistake of many managers is they are too nice. Then just recognize when they do nice job, they give them promotion, etc. And I think they would say. So that apply to all countries. I think specifically for Japan, we need also to recognize what is unique in Japan. So, and that we did a lot of mistake at the beginning. So especially when you had the initial big contract here, we had a bit more staff just to deliver that project. And it was very difficult to keep the staff. And because we don't recognize the uniqueness of the market. So what are the uniqueness of the market is the way we need to communicate with Japanese customers, the way we need to deliver to Japanese customers. So many aspects are very specific to Japan. And if we don't follow those Japanese rules, the staff may feel uncomfortable to work for you and they will leave. And so that's really to adapt to the uniqueness.
Thing, isn't it? They have built up trust with the client, with the customer, and then the company is, in their mind, betraying that trust to the client because the company is not delivering what it said it's going to do to that client, and they feel that personal responsibility to the client, and they feel, oh, I've been betrayed, so I'm out. That's usually how it goes, isn't it? So that's a tough thing. But I guess for you guys, that was a learning curve to understand, okay, if we don't get this right, we're going to have nobody working for us, right?
Yeah, we lost many employees at the beginning.
Did you?
Because
Really?
of that,
Okay.
yes.
Wow. Okay. And also, what about culture? Because you're creating the company from nothing, really, in Japan. So did you have like a culture plan of what sort of culture you wanted in the company? Because you're not a Japanese company. You're a Gaspard, you're a foreign multinational company. And so it's got a different, you're Belgian, it's got a different feel to it. I'm Australian. I run this, I'm the only non-Japanese in this company, but this runs with an Australian flavour to it because I'm me. And I don't, I've been here 39 years, but I'm still me. And I have a style and I have expectations and the way I talk and the way we work together. It's an Aussie way of doing things in Japan, customized for Japan, but it's still not. I'm sure if this company had a Japanese president, it'd be an entirely different culture. So what do you think about the type of culture you want to create here and how you create it?
Yeah, we didn't really make a specific plan to think about what culture we want to implement in Japan, but generally our approach is a bit as you said. So we try to implement our own culture. So
I think a lot of Belgian beer and a lot of Belgian chocolates would be a very good cultural asset that you could bring into the organization.
Yes. So we try to bring our old culture and then to adapt, but generally as little as possible to the local market. So it's good enough for the people. So when we were in Indonesia, so Indonesia is a Muslim country, so we had to adapt the rules. We need to adjust to the Muslim habit, etc.
Ramadan and this type of thing.
And each country are different. So we have similarities that between Belgium and Japanese, we both like beers, so that was the similarities.
I'm always happy if you invite me around, Gaspard, for a big drinking night on the blonde beers from Belgium and the beautiful chocolates you have. It's great.
Yeah, they have nice event five times a year, maybe, or 6 times a year in Tokyo. Belgium beer event.
Yes.
I think we can Google.
Yes. Well, we were at the French Chamber the other night, right? And you had a whole bunch of your team there, so you're exposing them to that foreign culture as well, which is a very good idea. It may feel part of a bigger community. They normally wouldn't go to a function like that.
But that's the value that we offer as a small company, international firm.
Exactly,
I think that's why we also try to keep our culture, because that's also why the Japanese. So we should not be afraid to impose a bit of international or European Belgium value, because that's also why they are there.
Yeah.
Why they decide to join our company, because we are a bit international.
Something
firm.
a bit different internationally. Yeah. And now, if someone rang you up and said, "Gaspard, look, you've been in Japan since 2020. You've come through COVID. You've established a business from nothing. You've built it up. My company's sending me to Japan, and I have to run the organization, but I don't know anything about Japan. I don't speak Japanese. How should I be successful here?" What advice would you give that person if they called you and asked you that?
First, I think I would make sure to get help.
Okay.
Because in general, when you start in any country, it's good to get help, to get an assistant, or you don't need a full-time assistant, but at least you need a part-time assistant to try to outsource most of the job that you can outsource for a decent price, like accounting, legal. And in Japan, that's even more important than in other countries, because we don't speak the language, everything is written in Japanese, etc. So get outsource as much as you can. So not what is not your core business. The second, what I would say is convince your company or your business to get a bigger budget than what was required in other countries. Why? I mean, compared to the market, etc. Why? Because maybe Japan is, I mean, it may be cheaper than US, etc., but it's less efficient from an investment point of view to start in Japan, to start something in Japan. Like, things are slower, it's more challenging to hire the right salespeople. It will take longer probably to sell, longer to adjust your marketing to the market. So very, very difficult to adjust. So you need a bigger budget. So that's the first thing I would ask, actually, to get a bigger budget. That's what they needed to start in other countries. Probably what I would advise also is that in each country it's good to apply what makes the group successful in all other countries and to adjust a little bit. And I would insist that in Japan you need to adjust more, probably, because the Japanese market is more unique than other markets. And your boss may tell you, yes, that's what all other countries told me, and I know it because I work myself in many countries and we start in 10 countries, but Japan is more different than other countries. So that's what you need to tell your boss So basically then if you have enough help, you outsource, more budget and more time to be successful, it means basically, and then you're ready to adapt a little bit more. And maybe depending on the business, getting a little bit of help for your core business to know how to deliver that product in Japan, or how to produce that product in Japan, and how to sell or market that product in Japan. Because again, that may be very different.
How many salespeople do you have on ground here in Japan?
I would say we have two full-time equivalents in sales.
Right. That's a big job. So what about the language? Should they, I don't know whether you've started learning Japanese over these last few years. You've been here nearly, 3+ years. So should they learn Japanese, or they don't need Japanese? Just Google Translate will get you through, or how does it work?
Yeah, so you need staff that speak Japanese.
Well, do you need to speak Japanese? Do they need to speak Japanese?
It depends how long you plan to stay in Japan. So if, in my opinion, to learn business level language is very long. If you speak...
Did you learn Bahasa when you were in Indonesia?
Yes, but I don't have the level to deliver consulting service in Indonesian. I think to be able to deliver technical sales, technical speech in a local language is quite challenging. It's not like, I would encourage any expat to learn the local language in general, because they can enjoy their life. They can speak with people, etc. But to do a business in another language, it's a huge plus, but it will take years to get, because you need not native level, but a fluent level and quite advanced fluent level. So to get that level in Japanese probably is very long. So if you have a Japanese wife and you plan to stay more than 5 years in Japan, I would, of course, recommend to do that. But if that's not the case, you can decide to learn it or not. But you need staff that speak Japanese then.
That's absolutely the case here.
So maybe I'm biased because I'm not good to learn language. So I did decided not to learn Japanese because I also live in many countries, etc.
But you probably, you speak French, you speak English already. You learned some Bahasa when you were there. Do you speak any Spanish?
I learned a little bit of Spanish, but
Spanish,
I didn't stay
which means you've probably got a little bit of Italian as well. So you're already super multilingual already. But that's impressive.
Yeah, so Belgium, I was supposed to learn Dutch at school, but
oh, really?
I forgot, yes.
So in terms of, if you're going to define leadership, how would you define leadership? What's your definition of leadership?
To define, for me, leadership is making people do what you want them to do. So that is leadership.
It's a very nice definition too. Well, Gaspard, thank you, and good luck with building the organization to the size you want it here and overcoming all these challenges. And we'll keep in touch and see how that goes with you. So, join us again for our next episode of Japan's top business interviews.